Hey, Darren.
Hey, Jules.
Welcome.
I love the set.
Thank you for filling in for Jez this week.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to talk about something that happened on the weekend. Now, I know you're an ocean swimmer. Mm-hmm. So I was right out in the water, right out off the beach, and I'm just swimming along, sun on my back. It was absolutely beautiful, and minding my own business. And then a big police boat comes up and is yelling down at me and my friend with a megaphone, going, "You swimmers, get out of the water immediately. Get out now. There has been a shark attack." We repeat, get out of the water immediately. And we're like, my friend was like, an expletive sounded. And then we were like, quick, get back to shore. But we're about 500 metres.
Gets your attention.
Oh, it got my attention. And then you're like, I don't want to splash because sharks are drawn to splashes. So I've got to go fast, but also smooth. But my adrenaline is like clenching my chest.
Longest swim ever.
And I was also wondering, did they want to pick me up? Or like, where was this shark? There'd been no shark alarm. But then you get back to shore with all of this bursting adrenaline and you hear there's been this absolutely horrific shark attack. I really want to hear your views on it.
There's a range of emotions when you hear about a shark attack or if you see a video of a shark attack. And I think like you, it hits really hard. You know, we had one just near my house a few years ago, same thing. And it really hits everybody in that community. Of course, it hits the victim and their families and their friends the hardest.
Yeah.
But everybody feels a connection to it.
Yeah.
There's a common connection through the ocean and it's a really difficult space.
I'm Julia Baird on Gadigal land.
I'm Darren Saunders, also on Gadigal land.
And Darren, we should say you're a surf lifesaver and an ocean swimmer, and you're also a scientist. Having spent years at university, you're now Deputy Chief Scientist of New South Wales. So thank you for filling in.
Pleasure.
And this is also Not Stupid, where we talk about the things that are in your feed this week, the things that have been grabbing your attention and tickling your fancy. We want to talk about universities as well in just a moment. Like, what is going on there? It seems chaotic. It seems extremely troubling. And does it matter? And what do we do about it?
All of those things.
All of those things all at once. All right, Daz, let's talk about this shark attack. Mm-hmm. This man, you know, in his 50s, Mercury Psillakis, who was a shaper, a father, a partner, much loved. The tributes that have been coming out for him and his twin have just been really heartbreaking. We know that this is a man who, out in the surf, the statement of his family was that when he saw the shark, he was immediately warning other people to get away, telling the surfers to group together. He was someone that was vigilant. He swam every day. He was aware of the dangers. On that day, because I had a friend who was paddling out of the surf at the same time that Mercury was paddling in, and that friend said to me that there was a big rip on that. It was just between Long Reef and DY, and there was a big rip that was churning up water and making things quite difficult to see. But it really is this kind of alarming thing, Darren. Like, what did you think when you heard it? Because all surfers and all ocean swimmers know that this is an inherent risk, but it's still so deeply shocking.
It is shocking and it's a terrifying thought. I mean, it is a terrifying thought of a shark attack. And Terror, it's one of those great examples of where irrationality meets rationality. You know, you can convince yourself as much as you'd like of the chances and the risks and everything like that.
Well, the chances are very small.
They're tiny. I mean, you are much more likely to drown. Even if you're an experienced swimmer or surfer, you are more likely to drown than you are to get attacked by a shark.
Yeah. And yet.
But it's a risk, and it's one of those things we do. And for me, it's that the love of the ocean overwhelms the risk of the shark, right? That's kind of the equation that we all take.
Right.
And there's almost this weird discipline, but you would know this feeling too. There are days where you just go, you know what? Not today. It doesn't feel right.
It feels sharky. You know, I once had a marine biologist say to me, when you feel that, that's not you being spooky. You're actually responding to changes in the water. So if it's really quiet and there are no fish around, you're like, it feels sharky today.
Yep. Certain times of day, certain types of weather,
sunrise,
all sorts
sunset,
of things,
murky water and those kinds of things. But let's talk about what actually happened here. So it was a great white. We think it was an adolescent.
Yep.
Why? Why did this shark attack?
I would say we don't really know, to be perfectly honest.
Because it's usually mistakes. That's what shark experts say.
And especially with adolescent, juvenile type sharks, they think that it's usually a mistake. We're not a prey species of sharks. We're not very nutritionally valuable to them.
Yeah.
But they don't have hands and feet where they can touch and feel their way around. Their way of sensing the environment is partly through having a bit of a nudge and seeing what happens.
Yeah,
you know?
And the bites will be fatal.
That's right. And for us, that's a big problem. In fact, one of the things that's changed in the data, if you look back over 100 years of data almost, humans are getting better at managing shark attacks. There's more awareness of how to manage
in which way?
The injuries, so that there are fewer. The rate of fatalities is actually dropping because we're getting better at knowing what to do when it happens.
Which is
to tourniquet and to manage the bleeding and things like that. But why sharks do it, we don't really know. And it's one of the sort of, like a lot of things in the ocean, we don't really understand a lot about it.
Yeah.
You know, we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot partly because of the way we're trying to mitigate against shark attacks, which I think is a fascinating aspect of this, you know.
But when one happens, people immediately go, okay, they're on the rise. This is because of the rising ocean temperatures. Mm-hmm. Is there truth to that?
Look, I think if you look in the research, I think you could probably think of at least 20 or 30 different factors that could potentially be contributing to what we perceive as an increase in shark attacks.
Yeah.
The reality is there are very, very few shark attacks. There's a lot of variability. It's actually really hard to do meaningful analysis of the statistics on this, right? Because thankfully they are really rare, you know. Australia is one of the places where we have, you know, slightly more shark attacks than the rest of the world, but that's also partly because most of us live near the ocean and spend a lot of time in the ocean, you know, and so...
Yeah. Okay, so let me put the statistics to you. So the Australian Shark Incident Database, this is a joint partnership with Taronga Conservation Society Australia and Flinders University and New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. Okay, 2023, there were 28 encounters, 4 fatalities. 2024, 19 shark encounters, 1 fatality. 2025, so far, 17 encounters, 3 fatalities. Over the last 10 years, on average, 20 shark incidents each year when people were injured, on average 2.8 fatalities per year. So it doesn't seem like it's a dramatic increase.
It's not. There has been, I mean, you can measure a slight increase, but we don't really know if that's because there's more people going in the water or if there's more sharks actually encountering humans
a slight increase
because of a change in behaviour. So it's a really challenging space to work in that way.
Yeah.
We're starting to understand a lot more about the effects of ocean temperature on the behaviour of different shark species.
You were going to look into this now because there was someone who posted the theory that 18 degrees is it's a Goldilocks zone, they call, for white sharks in which they're more likely to attack. So should we then be more vigilant when the ocean is, as it is at the moment, by the way, 18 degrees?
I'm not sure you can be that specific about it. So white sharks tend to be more of a cold water species. So at this time of year in Sydney where we are, there are white sharks around because the water's quite cold. But it's not too far away. They'll start to migrate down towards Victoria.
And then we'll get the bull sharks.
And then we get the bull sharks who like the warmer weather and
they
like the estuarine flows coming out of the rivers because of the spring and summer rainfall and they're breeding. So the different patterns of what sharks are around and what prey they're chasing, you know, when the kingfish and the mullet and all the things that you see when you're out in the ocean, the rays and the other things. Yeah. It's this really complex mixture of environment and behaviour. And humans are doing different things in the ocean. You know, it used to be that a lot of shark attacks were on swimmers and that shifted in the last couple of decades to being more about surfers.
Why?
And we think that's probably just because there's a lot more people surfing than used to be. Used to be, you know, people didn't surf that long ago. So it's a really complex space to actually pin down a particular factor.
Okay, all right. So what do we do? Let's talk about shark nets.
This is a huge debate.
Right.
Yep.
Because the state government has said that, and I know that you can't in any way talk about government policy. You're really just talking now as a swimmer, as someone with scientific expertise. So the state government was going to be lifting some of the shark nets, and the councils were supposed to nominate which ones were going up. No one wants to nominate it because the concern that there's therefore a bite or an attack, and they are blamed for it.
Understandably.
Talk to me about nets.
It's a complex space. So nets have been around since the 30s in Sydney, and they're now in the summer months. So from about now through till about Easter time, we have these nets all the way from Newcastle to Wollongong on the the most used beaches. There's about 50 beaches that are netted.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth understanding. I don't think a lot of people realise how these nets work. It's not a giant barrier that gets stretched from headland to headland from the top of the water down to the floor of the ocean.
Right.
That's not what a net is.
A lot of people think that.
Right. There are swimming enclosures. If you go to Botany Bay or other parts around New South Wales, there are enclosures where there's netted areas that you can go and swim in.
Yeah.
Famously, occasionally sharks find their way into those, in fact, because they get holes in them sometimes. But the ones in the ocean beaches that we're talking about, they're roughly 150 metres long.
Yeah.
They're typically in water that's somewhere between 10 and 15 metres deep, and they're only about 6 metres high. So they only cover...
So a shark could go under it and definitely...
Over it or around it.
Over it, around it.
Yep. So if you wanted to, think about the beach where I spend most of my time around Maroubra, it's roughly 1 kilometre from headland to headland.
Yeah.
And there's a net that covers 150 metres of that and only about half of the depth of the ocean.
Well, see, is that like using a plastic bag to catch a mosquito?
The original idea behind the nets was to try and remove sharks that might be lurking around close to where swimmers are. So the nets are quite close to shore. And the idea was if there's a shark lurking around there, it might get caught in the net and that will remove these dangerous sharks.
Sure.
So that was the thinking.
Sure.
That was the thinking.
Not foolproof.
Right. Not foolproof.
Or shark-proof.
Exactly.
But a little crack.
Right. And there's a few cracks in that argument. The downside is it's not a protective barrier as such.
No.
A lot of the sharks are caught on the inside of the nets heading, on the sort of the shore side of the net.
Comforting. Yep.
The other side of this is that there's a huge environmental cost to these nets in that they catch a lot of other species. So, turtles, dolphins, whales occasionally, rays, all sorts of other things get caught in these nets.
But psychologically, we need it.
It makes people feel safe. Like it does. And there is a lot of psychology involved in this, right? And so it's a really difficult space to try and, like people have been talking about doing this trial for a long time. And if you walk down to my surf club or any bunch of surfers on the beach, you would hear a heated debate about shark nets and drumlines. And we can talk about drumlines as well. It's a really complex space. And I'm glad I'm not the people who have to make these decisions.
Yeah, but you're also a scientist who's like, this is about emotions.
Absolutely.
This is actually not about effectiveness. Okay, drumlines.
Yep. So drumlines are a measure that were brought in a couple of decades ago in New South Wales that this amazing technology.
How do they work? Yeah.
Basically, it's a baited hook with a piece of fish on it, a piece of tuna or mullet or something like that, a bit further out from shore from where, typically sort of 500 metres or so offshore.
It's got an anchor.
It's got a couple of big orange buoys. You'll see them if you go to
in America,
most of the beaches. Buoys.
That sounds so weird.
It does, doesn't it?
Every time I hear an American say buoy, it makes me laugh. Anyway, so they've got two buoys.
So they've got two buoys. They're anchored to the seafloor and a big hook. If a shark takes the bait, it detects that there's something attached to the hook. It sends a signal up to a satellite, and that triggers a boat. So these drumlines are set in the morning. They're taken out in the afternoon, so they're only there during the daylight.
Yeah.
And the idea is that a boat will very quickly respond. So they're supposed to respond within 30 minutes, and they are very fast at responding. They will take the shark off the hook and they will tag it. And if it's one of the dangerous species, a white shark, a bull shark, or a tiger shark, they take it out to sea, they release it, and shark swims off.
And they tend to go in the opposite direction because they don't want a repeat of that experience.
So it's a much more targeted way of catching the things that we're trying to catch, which are the dangerous sharks, and move them somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's then matched with detection technology. So you might see those giant yellow buoys that float off a lot of our beaches now.
Yeah.
They're sonar listening stations. They're listening for the little detectors that the sharks now carry when they've been tagged.
So that's what I occasionally check in on them, but I know that they're there all the time. That's the thing.
I took that app off my phone because I found it was actually playing with my mind to know that
they're there.
When you spend time in the ocean, the sharks are there all the time.
Yeah.
They're always there. You see them often.
Yeah.
If you follow any of the guys on Instagram that use drone footage, Jason down at Bondi with his drone shark app, the sharks are always there. Yeah. But it's remarkable how infrequently they do interact with humans. It's almost like they're not. Yeah. They're not.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we've done a lot of now we've got increased patrols on beaches. We have drones that fly all the time. So there's a shift in thinking towards more active monitoring rather than just having nets floating out there catching whatever swims past.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is we've learnt a lot about shark behaviour from now having hundreds and hundreds of these sharks swimming around in the ocean that teach us a lot more about the sort of environmental conditions they respond to, where they go to breed, what times of year they're hanging around. So we're learning a lot about the sharks from that, and that's also helping us to message to people about being shark smart or being aware of when the dangers are,
But if you look at these apps as well, and the Herald went back and was like, okay, what was the activity around Sydney or in New South Wales in the lead up to this attack? Everywhere. Evans Head, Avoca, Hawk's Nest, Terrigal, Kilcare, Maroubra,
Yeah, and that's a small proportion of the sharks that are out there. They're just the ones that have tags on them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a really interesting story. So I was on holidays up the North Coast last year around Christmas time at a very famous surf spot. And every morning, early in the morning, all the adults, all the kids are out surfing on their surfboards, having a great time. 8:30, 9 o'clock, the lifeguards turn up, put up their tent, put up their drone and sound the shark alarm because there's a baby white shark, lurking offshore. Yeah. And that happened 4 days in a row. So for the 3 hours between sunrise and when the lifeguards turned up with their drone, we were all happily surfing and swimming in the water.
Right.
The moment they put their drone up, they're like, oh, guys, there's a shark just there. And then we all sat on the thing on the shoreline with a coffee and looked at their screen on their drone and watched the shark swim around for the next 6 hours.
Right.
And the next morning we all went back and did the same thing. I think it's a really interesting insight into the mindset of how people think about this.
It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws this year. And we know that movie did probably more than anything else in terms of particularly pop culture to create and foster fear, that there was a big shark that would have return attacks. It'd be this rogue thing, which was not, scientific at all. We've had people who've worked with the film to say, no, there isn't a rogue attack. And, Valerie Taylor has tried to assure us that,
who's done more than just about anyone to increase our understanding.
That sharks are not interested in hunting us down as a species. So I feel like in Australia there's a lot of people saying we need to respect the ocean, respect the predators, try to monitor your behaviour, like don't swim when it's dark, murky, all those kinds of things. But then there's an attack like that, which is just so horrific. And I should say, all thoughts go out to his family and to his community dealing with this. There was a really sober feeling all up and down the beaches on that day, and I know that they were offering counselling at the local schools and so on. And I know you went through this when there was the attack at Little Bay.
Yeah, and that stays around for, you'll notice this, it stays around for a long time. It sticks with people. It crystallises it. It makes that risk real.
Yeah.
But the same thing happens if there's a drowning. It's you know what it's like, Jules. If you speak to anyone that goes in the ocean, almost everybody who does it on a regular basis accepts the risk, right? We know there's a risk. There's a risk from lots of different things, but particularly with sharks, it's that one thing.
Yes.
I've had to talk my kids through this when we swim out at the back and they're surfing. It's like, okay, there's a risk, but here's the thought process of how we deal with that risk,
Yeah.
And we all do stuff on the beach, on the way to the beach, in our everyday lives that are way more risky that we never give a second thought to. Driving cars. There's all sorts of things we do. It's just the nature of that interaction with a ferocious, what we perceive as this big toothy ferocious animal is terrifying to everybody, and that's kind of understandable. But I don't know anybody that surfs or swims that doesn't accept that risk. Everybody knows it's there. We all see them all the time.
Yeah.
And you just have to talk yourself through the rationale of it. You know?
Yeah, and I do think as well, having had a kind of experience of being caught in a terrible rip, I think the dangers by drowning are so much more serious. We lose so many more lives that way. I remember speaking to some experts who said to me, if they wish we could teach that there was a shark in every rip, and then people would actually properly kind of modify their behaviour. That is one thing we can do something about. Understand the ocean, understand the currents, the rips, the tides. Be careful on unpatrolled beaches, especially those Instagram-worthy ones that don't have people around where you might not be able to be rescued. Be calm, float with the tide and those kinds of things. And I'm sure that you're nodding because of your surf life-saving experience here.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, in all the years, 20 plus years I've been a surf lifesaver and I spend, all my weekends at the beach, I've had to deal with a lot more people drowning or near drowning than I've ever had to deal with people having encounters with sharks.
Right.
And if that's the one thing I could change of the risk in the ocean, it's that. People understanding that risk of drowning would be a much better thing for us all to focus on.
Okay, Daz, while we've got you here, I am really keen to talk about what's happening in universities. There's a lot of people very worried. There's a lot of discontent in the sector. There's a lot of students scratching their heads about where to go and what to do. There's a lot of people who are deeply committed to the idea and of universities and their place in our culture who are worried about the erosion of its authority along with its funding. Now, you and I are in a very particular place because we both spent a lot of time at university. You spent more time than me because you were a teacher and a researcher, but we both did PhDs, right?
Yep.
Presumably because we both love it and we believe in it. Me in history, you in science. And found that, difficult and weird to do, but also overall really valuable. Now we both have kids that are about to go through the university system or are looking down the barrel, and it is a vastly different scenario for them. And it is very confronting. I'm speaking on my behalf here for someone who, I love learning and I want my kids to experience that and to soak up knowledge in the best possible way. And I'm just looking at universities and frankly, for the first time in my life, I'm really confused about what's on offer and what's going on.
I think confronting is a really good word. Heartbreaking is another one I'd use. And I think you can, we can see this through a few different lenses. You can look at it through a few different ways. And I do spend a lot of time around universities but for the first time in a long time, I've had to view it through the student's eyes more than I normally would have because my kids are trying to decide what to do and where to study. And I think it's safe to say universities were creaking around the edges pre-COVID, and COVID really broke a lot of aspects of university life. And this isn't a peculiarly Australian problem. This is happening everywhere. Most people who went to university prior to, let's say, 2015 would not recognise a campus these days.
In what way?
It's become much more transactional.
Yeah.
Like it really has. And
terrible.
I don't want to be too hard on any particular aspect of this.
Mate, go for it. Just tell us what you see.
It's expensive to live in a city. Kids need to work. They need to just turn up to do their lectures and go home again. But, I mean, I did a lecture the other day at a university to a third-year course that had over 200 students in it. There were 3 kids. And I shouldn't call them kids. They're not all kids. There were 3 students.
3 turned up?
In the lecture theatre.
Were they doing it at home, the others?
They watch it on recording mostly. So, yeah, it's streamed and then it's recorded. And most of the students now will just absorb the material online. That's a hangover from COVID.
Wow.
But it also helps the universities with their bottom line because they suddenly don't need huge lecture theatres because they're not full of students
But
anymore.
then you also don't get the jousting,
the
asking of questions.
That's right. You don't get any of that, and you don't get a lot of the social aspects. And I don't want to be this kind of nostalgic old dude talking about, back when I was at uni, it was great.
Well,
but there are aspects to that are valuable about a university education.
I don't think that's being nostalgic. I think that we can accept that that's best practice, isn't it? Can't we?
I think it is, but it doesn't work for everybody. So there's an accessibility thing about being able to work and study at the same time. So from the point of view of administrators, they are struggling with how to make the books work. They've had these big drops in funding and challenges coming in every direction.
Okay, this is what I want to talk about. Because I do think a lot of people, we've heard so many stories about the university sector being in trouble and being underfunded for years and years now. What is actually going on? What is the root cause of these headlines we're seeing about? I know there's different cultural problems at different institutions, but we're seeing it about Wollongong University and ANU and UTS.
Pick almost any university.
Okay, all of them.
There's been a slow erosion going all the way back to when we were at university, a slow erosion of Commonwealth-funded revenue to universities.
Yes.
That's just been happening over time.
Basically halved over time,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's right. And we're now actually reasonably low down on the scale in OECD of how much money we spend on our tertiary education system. The university's response to that, it's a totally rational response, was to look for revenue in other places.
Yep.
And in Australia, that has mostly been through international students. There's a whole bunch of other debates wrapped up in that as well. But the universities quite rationally have said, okay, you're not going to give us the money, we're going to chase it somewhere else.
Yep.
International students bring a whole bunch of benefits to our universities and to our economy more broadly and our society, but it also causes frictions in lots of different ways. At the same time as that erosion of Commonwealth funding to universities on the whole, there's also an issue of we're not great in Australia at research funding, and America is now finding out what that looks like with the new administration really cutting university funding in lots of ways. That's also playing out in Australia because one of the ways we got around having no research funding was to look to places like America for research funding.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, isn't it?
So there's just these compounding issues.
Yeah.
And through the lens of an academic, and I was an academic for a few years and got out because I just couldn't handle the kind of
culture. In what way? How would you describe it?
Academics are just getting smashed left, right and centre. So they have society telling them that what they do, they're too woke, they're useless, they're just bludgers, they don't do anything,
right.
get a real job. These are people that are really working on the great problems of why we exist, how do we deal with them, the huge social...
Or in your case, how do we cure cancer?
How do we cure diseases? How do we deal with all the environmental problems we've got? They're important questions, right? Yeah. But these... every few years there's a new vice-chancellor, there's a new restructuring system, there's a new change to government policy and they're forced to react to that. And so there's this absolute fatigue of change going on while trying to do all of this over the top of COVID, over the top of not getting any research funding anymore. It's just, it's brutal and everybody's getting slammed.
And in COVID, they lost a lot of international students.
They did. They lost a lot of international students. They've largely come back.
Yes.
And they are coming back.
Okay. And so why are we still dealing with these financial...
So some of it's a hangover and I think there's part of the issue, there's not a lot of transparency around the financial aspects of what's going on in some universities, and there's a lot of argy-bargy at ANU at the moment around the accountability and transparency of what they're doing and why they're doing it.
And by the way, use of consultants.
Right, that's a whole other aspect of that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a moment.
And some of it is poor governance. Some of it is there's been bad decisions made in the past that are now coming home to roost. Assumptions were made about growths of revenue forecasts and things that never came true and probably were never going to come true. And so it's a complex mix. It's death by 1,000 cuts almost, But where it hits the ground is when, like you said in the intro, you see it through the eyes of your kids, looking at the equation of, do I want to go into all this debt to go and sit in a room with 3 people? Is a valid kind of view to think about,
Yeah. The other thing is that humanities are particularly being hit. History is under immense assault, I think. Have a look at some of the courses that are being cut. University of Wollongong, Cultural Studies, Language, Archaeology, Linguistics, Southern Cross University, Music, Art, Design, Digital Media, University of Tasmania. It's just going to combine humanities and social sciences. ANU has proposed merging or shutting the schools of music, sociology, crime, social justice, political science, international relations, public policy, and there's a whole bunch of other shutdowns happening at ANU as well. Does this matter?
Absolutely it matters. I mean, it might sound strange to hear a scientist talk about that, but these are the subjects that help us understand who we are, why we are, what our place in the world is. And a lot of that stuff needs to have a particular Australian lens on it. You just can't import history from an American university or from Oxford or Cambridge or wherever it might be.
But you think universities haven't done a good enough job of explaining why they're important?
No, I'm quite critical of this.
Tell me.
And I'm going to upset people by saying that, and that's okay. But I think if you have a conversation with your average sort of taxpayer who's funding this stuff, they're finding it hard to really understand what it is that universities do in their interest. They hear about vice-chancellors' massive salaries. They have a difficult job. I would not want to be a vice-chancellor.
It is a massive salary.
It's a huge job, but it's a massive salary. And
it's double, as people keep pointing out, it is double what the premiers are paid.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot of money. I don't think universities are doing a very good job of explaining why they exist and what they do for the average person in the street.
Okay, I'm an average person.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So universities, okay, one thing, they're training your kids in how to think, not just what to think. I think a lot of people mistake that. It's how to think.
Yes.
It's how to look at a problem, think about it, and find a way
Very
through
important
it.
with AI, by the way.
Really, that's super
thinking.
important with AI.
Yeah.
That's another challenge they're facing, by the way.
Yeah.
They help us understand the world around us. So they help us understand our place in the world. But from my perspective as a scientist, they help us understand the natural world, the threats to us, whether it's environmental threats, whether it's the threat of disease, whether it's understanding how our bodies work, whether we might understand the way economics works better. All of these things solve the challenges that we face, and they sort of underpin our ability to solve those challenges.
One of the arguments for universities is it improves productivity, but then others will say, why are you always linking universities to productivity? Are they about something else?
This is a real contest and a real tension in the way people talk about universities. There is a pragmatic aspect to going to university as an undergrad. It helps you get a job.
Yeah.
And for a long time, graduates have been paid better than non-graduates.
Yes.
That equation is shifting slowly, by the way.
That you're not paid as well.
Yeah, that premium is starting to erode a little bit. It's also a great enabler of social equity. And there has been a tension there around this sort of vocational nature of just training people to get a job, as opposed to the more traditional view of a place of thinking and a place of research.
Do you think that's just gone now?
I do. I think that cat's out of the bag.
Right.
And
the years when you would just go in and like you could have a lifestyle where you would just read all the time and people would argue about ideas.
I mean, I don't know what that looks like. A university never looked like that to me.
Yeah, right.
Maybe it did for you because we were in very different faculties, but I never saw that side of a university to me.
Yeah, the arts.
Yeah. And some of this is around the way we measure what universities do. The metrics that we use don't match what we think we want them to be doing. So there's a mismatch there. But there is this internal struggle going on between what do universities do? Why do they exist?
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem we're in now with universities, there has been this meteoric growth in the size of these universities. And some of our universities in Australia are some of the biggest in the world, by the way.
Right.
You know, tens of thousands, approaching hundreds of thousands of students in some cases.
Hundreds of thousands.
I don't think there's enough of a debate going on around, do we want universities to be that big? Do we want unquestioned, unfettered growth of universities? Do we always need to be chasing more revenue?
Well, it's clearly not working.
Right. We need a discussion about that. And I don't think we're having that discussion. And I understand why that is. The current sort of setup of policy and incentives means that universities are acting rationally in doing that. They're trying to get more revenue to cover their expenses. And research and teaching is really, really expensive, you know, so they subsidise that with international students. But I think it'd be good for us as a nation to stop and think, do we really want to have these massive universities? Right. Is that in our interest to do that?
Right. Which is why partly why they keep hiring consultant after consultant after consultant. In 2023, they spent $750 million on consultants and they still had, I think, 2/3 of their staff on casual contracts.
It's hard to justify that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, there's a sort of weird irony in that most of those consultants a few years earlier would have been being trained by the experts in the universities, who, you know, the universities posit themselves as centres of expertise. So we train all these business students and all these management consultants. We send them out and then we hire them back in rather than just asking the people who actually are the experts at this. And that gets more to that sort of transparency and governance thing. And I mean, you know, everybody knows why you hire consultants. They give you the answer that you want to do the job that you need to do. So there's an accountability issue there, and there's a bit of a transparency issue that we're starting to learn in some cases with universities. They're not being particularly transparent about the way they're using consultants and the sort of things they're asking consultants to do, and that's causing a lot of tension as well.
So where do we land here? Daz, I think we need to be demanding more accountability and transparency from the university sector.
Absolutely.
If we still believe in who they are and what they offer, and really question the idea of exponential growth ongoing.
Yep. And I think help people understand what they do for us.
Yeah.
Would help.
And read more books.
Read more books. Don't use ChatGPT.
While we're at it. All right, it's time for our picks of the week. Darren, what have you got for me?
All right, I've picked something that's a bit nerdy, but it circles the two things we've been talking about
I'm surprised
really nicely. So I went to this amazing thing last week out in near Queanbeyan in New South Wales. Yeah. It's this brand new shiny factory that's a biotech factory, but it's a biotech factory that recycles plastic. Now, we have made something like 10 billion tonnes of plastic in human existence. 10 billion tonnes. Most
One
of
the
that,
things I can't wrap my head around, actually.
Right, and if you go to some part, I mean, I don't think people always realise how lucky we are in Australia that we don't see a lot of that. But if you go to other parts of the world,
trash,
all you see is plastic everywhere.
Yeah.
Plastic's really cool stuff. It protects our food. There's lots of uses for plastic.
That's very problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also, you know, it's a huge use of fossil fuels. Most of that plastic's made from oil originally.
Yeah.
So the reason I picked this idea is because, A, it's a huge environmental problem. It's a huge problem for our oceans. Massive threat to wildlife in the oceans is plastic. We've seen turtles and fish wrapped up in fishing nets and things like that. But what I really love about this story is that the technology behind this was invented at ANU.
Yeah.
And when talking about the value of universities, this was still very basic research only, you know, less than a decade ago in ANU.
Yeah.
And if I'd have told you 10 years ago that some scientists at ANU had received a grant to go chasing bacteria that live in waste recycling facilities, you'd say, well, why would you want to, why are you interested in the genes of bacteria that live in rubbish tips?
Right.
Well, here's why.
Yeah.
Because it turns out one of those bacteria evolved an entirely new enzyme that nobody has ever seen before that can digest certain types of plastic. And if you then take AI and use AI to optimize that enzyme and make hundreds of kilograms of it, you can recycle plastic back to the very building blocks that we need to make new plastic.
Oh, that's amazing.
And if you can industrialise that at scale, you are starting to address a huge environmental problem.
Yeah.
But it's a great example of the sort of thing that can come out of this fundamental research that's going on by all these amazingly clever people in universities that is now providing jobs for an awful lot of people and potentially a huge export industry for Australia as well as solving an environmental problem.
That's awesome. Yeah. You have to let people, don't you, like go down a potential dead end, just explore this idea, fly a kite over here and another one over there, and one of them will take off and the consequences could be absolutely immense.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. So my pick is something I think you might be kind of interested in, actually. So there's this woman whose name is, let me get the pronunciation right, Rosie Pawlek. She's now 30. And she's got this very sweet dad. Over her life, she said all the significant moments and even insignificant moments of her life, her dad has written her letters, loves writing her letters. She says she's got thousands of from him over time. She'd be away at summer camp. She'd moved into her first apartment. Like, she'd get these little notes from him. And she said he finished a PhD recently and she noticed he was a bit aimless.
I can relate to that.
Same.
Yeah.
I remember finishing and going, what do I
do now?
I remember walking from room to room. I baked a lot. So she put out on TikTok, would anyone like to receive a letter from my dad?
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. 1,000 responses. She got so many, and she said he's got this really sweet, sense of humour. And now they have it's called the Dad Letter Project. It's mail that'll make you smile or cry in a good way on their website. So now they're so inundated, they've got a couple of dads because they need to be writing letters and affirming. They want people who want like father figures or people who can affirm them or send something to them. Like apparently obviously each request is different. Some are grieving the loss of their own father. Others are wanting to hear a funny anecdote. And the website says sometimes you just need a dad to remind you that you're doing great, to offer unsolicited life advice or tell you a joke so bad you have a choice but to laugh, which is funny because I was actually going to talk to you about did you want to talk about the Matter Baby today?
The which?
The Matter Baby.
The Matter Baby?
Yeah.
What's the Matter Baby?
Nothing. What's the matter with you?
Okay,
Thank you. That's my dad joke.
That's a top shelf dad joke.
That's a great dad joke. Oh, you got you too. Anyway, my son loves that one. Wow.
Your son is good at dad jokes. He's going to have top shelf dad jokes.
He's going to have. Anyway, I absolutely love this, and I almost filled it out last night, and then they go off and mail it, and they're all around the world. I think I am going to fill it out, actually. I think I'd like a letter from one of these dads.
I love that. I love that. I'm a girl dad, right?
Yeah.
I love that you take the time to tell your kids about your experience and what you love about them in a written form. I think that's a really nice thing, and I love getting that back the other way as well. By the way, it's a really nice thing that we don't do as much as we used to for various reasons.
An actual tangible written letter.
But I love the idea of sharing that with other people.
It's
I think that's just gorgeous.
Isn't it? Anyway, so check it out. We'll put it in the show notes.
Fantastic.
And if you want to contact us, you can contact us at notstupid@abc.net.au. Darren, what a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for filling in for Jez.
Big shoes to fill, but I had a great time, Jules.
Massive and beautifully tailored.
Great fun.
Always. Wait, are shoes tailored?